Wonderful. Thank you all. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us in the second half of the morning presentations. As noted, I'm Sam Thompson, Senior Managing Director at Progress Partners. So joining me here on the panel, Vala from Salesforce, as noted. We have Amy, and then Lorine, and Mona. Great. So digital transformation, big part of the whole theme for this year's conference, and an area that we wanted to cover as a lot of companies that we interact with, larger acquirers, are thinking about transformation both inorganically and then also how are things changed internally. And we've got a panel here pulled together from a lot of different perspectives, different sides of the market that I think will speak to how some large organizations and some small organizations have gone through change, the role of technology, and really the role of human capital. So I might quickly go down the line just to provide you guys some context beyond just titles and companies of where each of these guys have come from, and then we'll move into some questions. So quickly, why don't we start on the far side and come back? But Mona, if you want to kick it off and give a little bit of your background.
Great. So good morning, everyone. My name is Mona Vernon. I am now at Fidelity Labs. I joined in 2019, and I'm working on building new businesses within Fidelity. Prior to that, I spent 9 years at Thomson Reuters, where I ran the artificial intelligence COE. I ran the corporate venture fund and built a whole set of global labs, and then went through the process of helping split that with Blackstone and help set up Refinitiv. And I'm an engineer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lorine Pendleton. I work with Portfolia. It's basically a fund that invests in various different companies. We invest in about 40 different companies across different industries. Prior to that, I'm actually a recovering attorney. I'd worked most recently about 2 years ago at Dentons, which is the largest law firm in the world with over 10,000 attorneys. I headed up actually business development. We actually launched a VC arm of Dentons to focus on investing in legal tech companies. And so I've actually personally have invested in a number of legal tech companies.
Hi, I'm Amy DeTavis. I actually started my career and sort of grew up in digital advertising, managing digital ad campaigns. From there, I pivoted more towards product management. So was consulting large companies like Procter & Gamble and Ford on how to identify technology opportunities and build digital products and services around that. So that's what I've been spending the past half-decade doing with that. I moved to Berlin a few years ago, still working in the digital technology space, and recently just decided to start my own company, Good Move, Sustainable Moving. So sort of putting all of those practices I was consulting on into practice for myself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vala Afshar. I was running engineering in 2003 when my company's CEO asked if I could also run customer service and support, and that's when I was introduced to Salesforce. So I was a Salesforce customer for 12 years running engineering services, and my last assignment was CMO of a local technology company. In fact, the infrastructure for all of Gillette is my prior company, Extreme Networks, so the Wi-Fi and switches and routers and software that you see. I ended up writing a book about how to best implement CRM into enterprise when I was a customer of Salesforce. That led to writing articles, north of 500 articles I try to contribute weekly, and a weekly podcast that speaks to disruptive leadership, innovation, business models. So I was fortunate enough 4 years ago where the president of product invited me to tell stories inside of Salesforce as their chief digital evangelist. So I'm a storyteller now. So.
Yeah. Great. Thank you all. So let's jump in. We got to figure out, we've got about 25 minutes, even less with some Q&A at the end here to learn a little bit about what you guys have been reigning and harnessing at your respective jobs. So, Amy, big brands, right? One side of the panel here, you've been dealing with some of the largest CPGs in the world.
Yep.
And helping drive very specific change
Yep.
between teams. Where did that even, what was the catalyst for the change there? What influenced even the initiative to get that going? And then how, were you the change agent? Were you looking for that change agent internally?
Sure.
Tell me a little bit more about, or tell the audience here a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think big corporations like Procter & Gamble, like Ford, they really, of course, they see the need for innovation. They see the need to evolve, especially more into a digital space.
Yep.
I was working at a firm called Icon Mobile, which was a boutique firm specializing in digital products, so IoT development, software development. So I came in as a strategist and sort of identified different types of products we could build. For instance, I helped Olay build a product, their first ever digital product. It's called Skin Advisor. So it uses AI technology at shelf to help customers find what product is best for them by identifying their skin age. So those types of projects for a company like Procter & Gamble are completely new, right? They make chemistry, and this is very different than that. So we really had to collaborate very closely with both the marketing team and the R&D team. And it was really the first time where everybody is sort of in it from the ground up. I think there's a lot of times in sort of more traditional product development that the ball is passed down the field. And these types of products that are built, you really have to collaborate with a very integrated team.
Across disciplines.
Yeah, and it's a big challenge for companies whose infrastructures aren't really set up for that.
Not naturally innovative.
Yeah.
Similarly, Mona, you've talked about stakeholders, right? I mean, you're pulling together input from a lot of different teams.
Yeah.
And getting buy-in, Fidelity, but even before that, Reuters. How do you even know where to find the right stakeholders as you approach these projects and getting involved with the?
So one of I've sort of told my kids, and I think it's true, is that my life is all downhill out of last year because I got to spend 9 months helping NASA redesign their innovation strategy as a volunteer job, which made my day job investing in legal tech a lot less interesting, or fintech. And the thing that I got heard back is actually a simple sentence, which is at the foundation of everything is trust, and really building trust across an organization. So by definition, the reason why it's so hard for large organizations to innovate is that they have this challenge where their business structure and the organizational structure is defined on their product today, and they're trying to build the kind of product Amy is describing, which requires to re-architect themselves. And that's just hard because people have jobs and they have big teams, and suddenly the whole thing has to be organized differently. And so the way that you have to do that is to actually, I think, bring in a lot of conversations about building trust and helping people understand that we just have to slowly rethink how we're organized, and that it goes through cycles. Talking about Thomson Reuters, this big central group, and I knew that was necessary for a while to attract the talent that did all the machine learning and natural language processing and so on, but that eventually this should become embedded in the business. So just the idea of thinking about organizational structures as fluid is so uncomfortable. Like, what do you mean? I mean, and just like saying, I'm going to build this big group, but by the way, I don't want to hold on to it. I want to disseminate it. So a lot of this stuff is obvious, but really hard to do. And I think starting with trust and slowly working towards incentives that create that notion that change is the constant, start enabling a lot of those things. And I think companies that have got more bold about questioning the rigidity of some of the structure, rethinking and enabling agile, not as a buzzword, but as a way of being, are going to, I think, be the best position to get to that place and do the kind of innovation Amy described.
Trust and communication being a core to that being possible.
Yes.
Yeah. And a single source of inspiration around that, a visionary, or is it more about bringing the team together under a single vision?
That's you know this, and I think there is a big debate on can you innovate without having a benevolent dictator type, because some of these companies that are really winning have a person at the top, like Vala knows at his company. I actually think we're in this fantastic spot where you can distribute innovation if you empower your colleagues by doing something that's really quite bold, which is enable your technology infrastructure to provide sandbox for experimentations, enable tools to let people do that type of innovation. So I'm really passionate about a lot of the boring stuff that nobody cares about, but I think is huge, which is data integration, data infrastructure, sandboxing, and setting up safe environment for people to do some of that stuff. And because there are people that are really close to their customer, and so it's I think that can happen without having just one vision. It certainly helps, but I also feel that most likely you see incredible things happen in large companies that are not top-down, but come from the sort of collective intelligence of the firm.
Sure. And Lorine, speaking a little bit to your investing background, I mean, you were actually putting money to work and supporting businesses that came back around, right? And at Denton's, you guys ended up launching the venture arm, which is unusual in itself. And maybe you could speak a little bit to getting that started, but then actually where you had a vision to drive that business, part of the business forward. Some of the businesses that you had supported came into that, and that became a larger shared vision across not only the Denton's organization, but for the legal community.
Right. So I think regarding Denton's, which is kind of a cutting-edge law firm, for them, they saw that there was increasing pressure from clients on legal fees. And so, and a lot of, I don't know if you know this, but typically when you take on a big client, they issue an RFP, and I got involved in that. And a lot of those RFPs ask for, technology we were using. They have vendors where we use those vendors if we did get the engagement. And so we saw that there were increasing these pressures from clients because the general counsel and, his or her office, they're getting pressure from the C-suite to cut their legal spend. In some cases, some companies may spend $150 million a year on legal spend. And so it's it's not a revenue generator. It's actually, costing the company, and they're getting pressure from the board, C-suite to cut their legal expenses. And so they're using other alternative providers. And so at Denton's, we decided, why don't we create this, arm of the firm? Partners will fund it. It's a separate entity. Then we'll start looking for the best in class of these type of legal technology companies out there, and we'll invest in them. And then actually, when we respond to these RFPs or we have client engagements, we can say, oh, by the way, there's this company that we've invested in. They do X, Y, Z, and so we can get them into the door. And so that's what's happened. Really interestingly, before that whole Denton's business arm launched, I had started angel investing. I've been angel investing for the past 7 years. I invested in a company called High & Esquire, and they ended up didn't have anything to do with me, but Denton's ended up investing in them about 3 years ago. And they're a really great company looking at, basically on-demand legal services. So there's this change in the work kind of talent of lawyers. So a lot of people, particularly millennials, don't want to be on that grind to become a partner. They might want to take off a month and go surfing in Costa Rica or write a book. But they have great backgrounds, and they worked at big law firms. So High & Esquire took those lawyers and put them on the platform. And then in-house counsel, remember, they're looking for cost savings. So they're able to tap into this great legal talent when they need suddenly, say they have an M&A and they need, acquiring a company, they need someone who speaks fluent French. They don't maybe have that, in their in-house, or their attorneys outside don't have that. They can go on that platform and find really great lawyers. And now, 7 years later, fast forward, High & Esquire has about 2% of the legal U.S. active attorneys are on their platform. Which is incredible. And they're not just a typical, what law firms are called vendor, because now they're using predictive analysis and data to basically match using, the people who get on the platform will answer some questions about their psychology, their background, and then when they get a project on the platform, they match people, and it's been really great in terms of the clients wanting to bring back that person. In some cases, actually, a lot of those temporary hires have actually, clients have gotten them and hired them as permanent. So that created another revenue model for Hire and Squire to get a placement fee. So that's the kind of thing that I've been seeing, and just really interesting company, and then just being validated by debt's investment in it. But there's some great companies in that space.
Sort of silent visionary that you are. Yeah. Thank you. So Vala, speaking though of sort of catalysts, and clearly with some of the writing you were doing, this elevated, I think, your perspective, your ability of storytelling to probably align a lot of different people about how they approach technology like Salesforce. And I'm sure you've seen many different organizations now, as you've been working with the organization, who had to have taken this technology on board. And I imagine you're not really part of the integration per se, but you probably see a lot, and how you could speak to who gets involved, how these organizations are really actually also post-install, how are they making it really work, right?
Sure. I think all of us need to be storytellers, by the way. It was Steve Jobs who said the most powerful person in business is a storyteller. And because things are so hard, complexity, the innovation velocity, both speed and direction, is unprecedented. So we have to articulate the why and that first, and then the how and what, and do that in a trustworthy way. A couple of gold nuggets of wisdom Mona just dropped. Trust. That has to be your number one core value. And the marriage experience has to be better than the courtship experience. So the integration, adoption, all of that for successful companies, it's important to establish trust. But how you define trust as a storyteller, Rachel Botsman, Oxford lecturer, wrote a book on trust, said it's competence plus character. And she broke competence into capability and reliability, and character into integrity and benevolence. Your good intentions. There's a fine line between manipulating and inspiring, and it's your intentions. So if you're clear with your intentions through storytelling, you can become a trusted stakeholder. The companies that are looking at technologies today understand that movement is the ultimate status symbol. They recognize the importance of removing friction. So regardless of the technologies you see today, and you'll hear from distributed ledger to IoT to augmented reality, mobile social cloud, and we can go on and on, the combinatorial factor of those technologies to remove friction, like the 3,000 Amazon Go stores where you can walk in and walk out in seconds, they'll have 3,000 stores by 2021. That's the magic of improving the customer experience. So I have a good fortune of working with the fastest growing companies in the world, and the one common thing that I see is, again, what Mona mentioned, flow. It's in a design-based organization, the interactions between departments is more important than the department itself. So when you're thinking about movement, how do you capture customer insights in different departments, and in near real time, analyze, recommend in near real time engagement opportunities that can co-create value for all the stakeholders, customer, partner, employee, communities you serve. So at the end, the folks that are successfully, and these are mostly at this point digital natives, like myself, most of you in this room are digital immigrants. You weren't born mobile, social, cloud. You don't have AI underpinnings in your businesses, I would assume. My kids are digital natives. They were born and they're comfortable with smart devices and social networks and texting, and as much as they value privacy and ethics, they're definitely more comfortable in terms of leveraging technology, and they appreciate low friction. So it is all about movement. Yeah. And departments are pumps. Think about a healthy body. Your heart gets blood everywhere, your lungs, air everywhere. So like Mona said, if departments are holding on to things, imagine if your heart held on to blood and didn't distribute. Departments today that are successful are distributing insights, new ideas, innovation opportunities across the entire line of business. So it's about flow.
Mm-hmm. And I would also argue, it's, removing that friction, it's not just something that, companies should look to do, it's a mandatory. And I would say that the younger generation, the digital natives, they won't accept your product if there is friction. It's just a mandate.
Absolutely. And you also need an enriching environment. It's not just departments as pumps getting information, but are you in an environment where there's an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, startups, where new ideas, new capital, new customers, new talent is flowing in and out of your business. The reason why our corporate venture capital arm at Salesforce is one of the most active is because we know no company is immune to disruption. So you really have to recognize law of numbers. No matter how big and successful your company, there's always more smart people on the outside than inside. So if you don't have a culture that's listening and with a beginner's mindset, you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Amy, I'm actually interested with some of the projects you've gotten brought into and where you've been involved with whatever that task may be, right, with skin analysis and otherwise. But are you being brought in with a specific technology in mind, or are they coming to you with a problem? Any thoughts on reactions to when you've been introduced into a project where do you have to kind of reset everybody for a second and say, let's put this technology aside, let's actually,
Yeah, I mean, I think, technology is sexy and exciting, and a lot of times can be very like, yes, let's do it all. My job is always to narrow the focus. What's going to have the most, of course, impact for customers. I also think something that sounds so silly to oversee, but often does get overlooked is, what problem are we solving for? And technology for technology's sake is a path a lot of people kind of get sucked into. So what problem are we solving for? And then being really diligent about, I always say technology is an enabler, right? It's not the end all be all. So yeah, I think a lot of times they come to us with a type of problem, and then where we end up might be somewhere very different. Yeah.
And Mona, I know you've talked a lot about metrics.
Yes.
It's a big part of your job. Putting, say, a time frame on it, how much is in that sort of lead up, getting all the metrics, getting it all right, getting all the information in compared to actually when you start execution?
Yeah, so I mean, it's I'm a big fan of what Amy said. So when the first people would come to me and say, we need to put AI on the roadmap. And I'm like, okay, so what is the problem we're solving? Or when you do investments, it's like by waves. Every startup was a big data platform. Now they all have something on the blockchain. And it's like, but what is the problem that someone cares about and is going to pay money for? And if you start a lot of time on the problem statement, I think you end up actually coming up with a lot better outcome. So like one, I guess nugget, and something I noted a lot, and lots of people have written much clever books about this, is large companies tend to have really, really solid metrics. Actually, I'll just make a call for Sefi Bakal's book, Loon Shots, which just came out recently, and he's got a really nice way of saying it. It's like, don't apply the wrong metrics at the wrong time, right? So if you're doing an innovation project, it requires that art. It requires that, what is the problem statement? What is the experience of the lawyer that can be better? Or why is this a problem that someone's willing to solve? And so, you know what? There is a ton of metrics that people are really good at in the field, what we call the artists and the soldiers. The soldiers need really hardcore metrics. And I often find that someone designs an innovation program and they come in and they say, well, we're going to use these KPIs. I'm like, well, we don't even know what we're building yet. This first 9 months, it's all about building an A-team, getting the right flow of stakeholders and domain experts from around the company, going to get market validation, and then let's go, so there is something, metrics are sort of this interesting thing where I really love them and I love using them, but it's just at the right time and the right way. And it sounds so simple, but it's, it'd be interesting to have some of you look across your organization, just step back and say, is this metric driving the right behavior? Why is it here? Just asking 3 whys about it could unlock a ton of value, and it could be anywhere in your organization. I bet you'll find that. So it's that designing them, implementing them, and then going back and revisiting them, because it's like once you deploy them, the world changes around you. How can you go and look at those? So I get a little, interested in those things because I think they can be used really well, but they can also be really distracting and really counterproductive.
I have just a quick anecdote, if that's okay.
Yep.
I worked, if anybody brushed their teeth this morning using an Oral-B powered toothbrush, that's one of the programs I helped rolled out almost 7 years ago using Bluetooth technology. And the problem was really simple. People don't brush their teeth long enough, period. They brush their teeth for about 45 seconds. Doctors recommend 2 minutes. So we rolled out a Bluetooth chip in the toothbrush to help sort of just give consumers an awareness of how long they brush their teeth for. So and this was whatever, like 7 years ago. So using that technology actually improved brushing time from 45 seconds to over 1:30. So the KPI in this case was brushing time. Even since then, the technology has gotten more sophisticated, and we've been able to do clinical studies that prove people who use the technology in the power toothbrush actually have 73% less plaque. So these are the types of KPIs and problem solutions that technology can really enable. And kudos to the Oral-B team for really being focused on that.
Nice. I had one other question for the panelists, but I'm also open to any questions from the audience. So if there are any, if they're not, I'll ask the question of the panelists, but we've got about 3 minutes left, so. Here we go.
Things that you've seen that you can identify and say, boy, that is not going to be successful. That's not where it's at. Any examples would be great.
So I'll jump in.
Yeah,
so as an investor, I look at a lot of different type of companies. And Mona mentioned, there's a lot of these companies around the blockchain or this and that. Really just when we look at investing, we look at how big is the addressable market, how big that is, and what's the solution that you're solving. And, we have made investments in, a couple companies that were unsuccessful. There was a big market for it. It just, a lot of times it's the execution. Also timing is really important. And then also, that founder or the founders, do they have what it takes to be successful? So that's really kind of the lens that we look through.
Going back to Mona's comments around trust as well, though, Lorine, do you also find that the teams and how they interact, are you looking more closely at that as much as you are the technology or the business opportunity?
Yeah, no, definitely, we do a deep dive on the team or, the entrepreneurs from getting their references, customer references, people who they've worked with previously. Actually, that's, we definitely look for the addressable market, market size, solution, but also looking at that entrepreneur. We'll do a deep dive, and that's really important. Also, if, how they interact with each other and the team, that's also really important.
All right, well, we've got a little bit left. Why don't I throw out the question here of just a little bit more, not so much in your professional roles, but back on a personal level, where you found technology to sort of drive your own career and your own profession forward. So from a personal perspective, right? And as we all are, not digital natives, but are understanding the importance of technology in our lives, and it's not just necessarily the mobile device, but even applications. What's the application you can't live without?
Twitter. Everything that's cool that's happened to me has happened to me after age of 40. So I received a US patent, I wrote a book, I write blogs, and I joined Twitter, joined Salesforce all after the age of 40. It was about 40 years of realizing that it's not, and we've been trained to consume resources, knowledge, expertise, and it's only through social networking when I recognize the power of the flow of resources. So when you read something and it inspires you, take a few minutes and share it, whatever the platform is, LinkedIn, or it may not even be social. Email it to your colleagues. But you would be amazed. For me now, it's a personal learning network. I've learned more, and I've connected with more VCs and startup founders and Fortune 2000 CXOs strictly through social media. It's magic. If you're properly used, it's magic.
Yeah, for me, as a consumer, I really won't engage with brands who don't have sort of technology-based offerings, especially in categories like fintech or banking. They're dinosaurs and they're so antiquated. And even in investments, working with like investment platforms, I really think it's important that the companies that I choose to spend money with or choose to have my services with represent the type of innovation that I'm used to.
For me, I'm not one particular platform or app, but definitely social networking. I was actually one of the first users of LinkedIn. When they had their anniversary, I was like one of the first 100,000 users of it. And I've connected with people on it on LinkedIn. I know it's gotten really busy now. Then also Twitter. I think with social media, you can scale yourself as a brand, whether you're an individual or a company, and have a direct one-on-one with people. So I find social networking really, really key.
I'm gonna have a weird answer because I could answer, Python or anything in my, artificial intelligence world. But I think the world is getting so complicated and busy, and with Teams or Slack, the thing that I found the most useful app, and I'm not affiliated with them at all, is my core yoga app. And taking the hour to actually step back and start thinking about the big system and how I'm gonna come back to work and deal with that. So.
My bike is my killer app. Yeah.
What?
My bike. Get out, clear the mind. Anyhow, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was a great panel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.